It was a defining moment of my generation. It was the singular experience every war is for that generation, and I'm glad I didn't miss it. We should not have been there, but we were there. I re-enlisted for personal advancement. I don't know if I should be proud of that or ashamed of it, but that's why I did it. And I accomplished what I set out to accomplish and much more. The unknowable part of it. I had never expected to spend another 9 years in the Army after Vietnam, but I did. I rose to the rank of captain. I commanded troops in wartime. I was able to get the kind of education that you cannot get any other way. It was life-changing in many ways. On one side of it, you see the horror of war firsthand. A lot of things that you would never see otherwise, and you never really want to see again. I still have a recurrent nightmare. This actually happened, but I dream about it. I'm walking through a little mountain village just at dawn. There was a kind of indigenous people in the mountains of Vietnam called montagnards. The French call them that. These are Bronze Age people, and every man, woman, and child in it was dead. And their limbs and their faces were mottled purple. They had all died of bubonic plague. Rats were gnawing on their corpses. Fleas were everywhere. We didn't stop. We just walked through the village. The way we lived in Vietnam was very primitive. You know, hot water was a luxury. A cold drink on a hot day was a luxury. Clean sheets, never saw any. Fresh food, never saw any. Latrine, hole in the ground. We lived better than animals, but not much. And I never had a shower for 35 days. My clothes rotted off me. I had infections all over myself, skin infections, fungus infections. Everybody did. Terrible, terrible condition. You know, I got back to the United States. We used to say, get back to the world. Even today, you know, a cold drink, you don't take it for granted. You know, hot food, you don't take it for granted. We live in an unimaginable luxury compared to the way most of the people in the world live. And if you haven't ever experienced that, you have no idea how good we live. And I do understand that, and I do appreciate it. So yeah, that changed my life. I went to my 4th high school, and I found something there that put a little order in my life, which was a high school ROTC. I got to wear a uniform 1 day a week, and sometimes I could stretch it to 2 days a week. And I did very well in junior ROTC. I decided that I wanted to go to West Point because I could get a college education that way. I went to a recruiting station to take a physical, and they laughed. I was a half an inch over 5 feet tall, but you had to be 5 feet 4 inches tall to go to Officers Candidate School or West Point. So 4 days after I graduated, I enlisted as a private. And I spent 3 years in the Army as an infantryman and became a sergeant about a week before my 19th birthday. All this time, it was a matter of being a 5-foot soldier in a 6-foot Army. I was in the infantry because I wanted to prove myself. And I did prove myself. But when I was 20 years old, there was nothing left for me to prove, and I was at a point where I decided I needed an education. I'd always been interested in photography. I never had any money for cameras. Being around a camera store, I could look at the stuff, I could figure out how to make it work. Then one day I saw a picture on a cover of Life magazine. It was about a Marine Corps helicopter squadron in Vietnam. This is 1964. And I looked at these pictures and I said, you know, if I had the balls, I think I could do this. I hope I could do this. And this interested me. I thought this would be a great way to spend your life. It was a great way to get into journalism. I decided that I would re-enlist in the Army, and I would get the Army to train me as a photographer, and I would volunteer to go to Vietnam, and I would build a portfolio and make some contacts with the civilian media, and this would be my career. This is now March of 1965. We're not yet involved in combat in Vietnam, but it's looking that way. I went on the 3rd Huey in a daisy chain of 5. That's a platoon of Hueys. About 8 soldiers on each one. I sat in the door gunner's chair on the left side, and I had not just I had my rifle, of course, and my field gear, but I also had this gigantic camera, this speed graphic camera. And we are flying nap of the earth, just a few feet off the trees. It is raining inside the helicopter, and everybody is soaking wet, including the camera. Everybody's soaking wet, everything. And then I'm looking out the side of the plane, and the first of the aircraft in our sequence, the Huey, dips down into this landing zone. We're about a minute and a half between planes. And he's down about a minute, and then he comes back up, and then the second one dips down. And then the second one comes up and blows up just as it clears the trees. And we pulled up and flew through just the very top of that fireball, and suddenly I was all dry, and I had no facial hair. All my eyebrows were gone. Now I'm wearing headphones, and I'm listening to these pilots talk. And we went around in a long, big circle, big arc, to try to come back in while they assessed whether or not that helicopter had blocked the landing zone. We knew that there was one ship on the ground with all its troops, one squad, and then probably the troops from the second one, and then maybe there were some survivors of the helicopter, we don't know. And all these guys were talking about is how to get in there. They never discussed leaving them. They were just, how are we going to get in there? This was the longest minute and a half of my life, and literally my whole life flashed before my eyes. All the things that I had never done, and all the things I wanted to do, all the people I had been bad to, and all the apologies I needed to make. I literally just was in a trance for a minute and a half. And as we approached this, it suddenly occurred to me that if we were going to land on this landing zone, I was going to have to go through that fire twice. Once in and once out. If we got in, I don't know what we were going to find on the ground, you know. Would I be safer on the plane? Would I be safer on the ground? You know, that was what I was thinking. But I realized if I didn't get out of the helicopter, I would never do it. If I didn't get out this time, I was never ever going to be able to do it. So when time came, I jumped with everybody else and ran across the little open space and threw myself down against a tree, out of breath, panting, scared to death. I hear the chopper behind me, the drop that's hovering out. It gets out okay, and then another one comes in behind it. And I think, oh, that'd be a great picture. And I roll over on one arm, and I frame the picture, take the picture, and then I realize I haven't taken the dark slide out. By that time, the helicopter's gone. So I pull the dark slide out, and I wait for the next helicopter. And the guy runs across the front of me, and I track him, and I take this picture. The guy with a rifle, and he throws himself down and it points at the camera and starts to laugh. I look at the camera, the whole front end of it has been bashed in by a ricochet. And that was my first combat.